Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Johnson, the Fiscal Sponsorship and Communications Manager at Southeast Uplift. Thank you for joining us today. This is our first session in the 7-part House of Development webinar series presented by and in partnership with COGEO. This session is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel. You are welcome to have your camera on or off, whatever is most comfortable for you. If you have any additional access needs, feel free to post those in the chat. We have enabled live transcription. And we ask that you remain muted during the presentation and save questions for the end. We have reserved time for a brief Q&A. Our next session will be next Wednesday, June 21st from 4 to 5 p.m. That will be focused on annual and membership giving. And now I'm going to hand the mic over to our wonderful presenter, Chelsi, to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Lindsay. So my name is Chelsi Straubinger. As Lindsay mentioned, I am a team member with COGEO. I am the Director of Client Services. And for a little background on us before we dive into our presentation for the day, COGEO is a consulting firm for nonprofits, and we're based in Portland, Oregon. And we support 501c3 sector and support 501c3s in their fundraising and development goals, really helping steward them and catalyze their growth so that they can really achieve their mission and vision. We like to say we work with organizations with a grand mission serving a grand vision, and they might just need a little boost and help support them to get there. And our sweet spot organizations we support typically are in the small to medium size. It's just where we found that we can have the greatest impact and make the most difference. All right, so yeah, thank you everyone for joining. As Lindsay mentioned, this is going to be recorded, posted on Southeast YouTube channel, and it'll be accessible to everyone. So let's dive into it. All right. So I am going to take my screen off just to make sure that there's no lag, just making sure that everything stays smooth, and let's dive into it. All right. So our first slide here gives a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be doing in today's webinar, as well as future webinars. So as Lindsay mentioned, this is going to be a 7-part series, and this is our first session, which will involve an introduction to what we call, COGEO has termed, the House of Development. And we'll also take a look at the foundational level of the house, which is communications. So we'll be analyzing each floor of the house in a tactical way in upcoming sessions. And before I dive into the kind of meat of our presentation for the day, I will say that we'll dive into the introduction a little bit in more detail, but if you do want to learn more, feel free to check out our website at goraise.us or cogeo.us, or feel free to reach out to me directly at cs@cogeo.us. All right. So goals and context for today. So what are our goals? First, we want to understand why professionalized development work is vital to the future of your agency and its success. So here's some context. So approximately 1.56 million of the 1.66 million nonprofits in the United States operate under about 500,000 in annual revenue and total assets. So that's a vast majority, 94% of nonprofits. And based on COGEO's client data, over 90% of organizations in this category don't operate formalized development programs. And even those not in this category, so those maybe making higher than that 500 annual revenue, still have significant opportunities for expansion and improvement in their fundraising and development work. The exception would be universities, colleges, and hospitals that are really highly maturized in their fundraising and development work. They know what they're doing. They have a really fantastic system and something that we work to emulate and adapt for different entities and agencies. Our other goal for the day is introducing COGEO's House of Development framework to help you understand what is important tactically and what to focus on. And the idea is to learn how to be a great homeowner, which I'll cover a little bit more in upcoming sessions and in upcoming slides in this session. And last goal is also understanding how communications are important in accelerating fundraising growth and why they're so critical and needed as the foundation for all other fundraising activities. You'll see in a minute, the House of Development really built on itself. So by the end of the session and in upcoming work, you'll be able to understand how to drive traffic, keep the conversation going through the entire spectrum of development. So from the first time a potential donor contacts you into when they become a donor and transact. All right. So our next slide here is the introduction to the House of Development. So you'll see this is an image and a tool that we use to conceptualize how different blocks of development fit together and why development is so critical in the nonprofit sector. And this is really intended to be looked at from the bottom up. So you'll want to start looking at the pathway in the garden, which is communications. It includes things like PR, websites, social media, e-newsletters, and annual reports. And then from there, you go into annual and membership giving, which is, as an example, for instance, you may receive a degree from a college, you graduate, and now they solicit you. So that is annual giving. It's an appeal essentially for a project or general funding to an individual. And if you're a membership 501c3, you should, in an incremental fashion, focus on annual giving because your membership likely has capacity to make a larger donation, including and above their membership fee. And we tend to term this as retail as well, because it's unrestricted and typically and used for general operating needs. And then in the second room or pillar, you'll see events. So events can take a lot of different forms, as I'm sure you're aware. It's golf outings, things like galas, walks, different types of bonds, and they really help raise awareness and build community. And they can be really effective or not in terms of investment. A lot of 501c3s we've seen are operating inefficient events in terms of ROI. So it's really important to think through your events, how many you're hosting, what the engagement rate is, what you're seeing in terms of return on investment. We tend to advocate for two types of key events, cultivation events and signature events. And in the second floor, jumping up a floor there, are corporations and foundations. So usually the interaction between them both is going to be different. Corporations and foundations operate differently, have different values. With corporations, there's really an associative balance in the transaction. So they really want to see a return on their investment. And foundations do as well, but more in a sense of making sure that they're having impact. Corporations want to see kind of what's in it for them to support. So you really have to frame the conversation and the requests and proposals around that. And next up is major gifts in that second room. And that's composed of individuals from the first floor. So folks in annual giving who have capacity to do an even larger gift. And it takes time to cultivate and steward them. And in the last room there on the second floor, you'll see planned gifts. So these are gifts that are in the future where donors can derive revenue annually or leave something or an organization in their estate or will, which is called bequests. And there's a lot of different vehicles in planned giving that we'll touch on in the future session when we discuss planned gifts. But just as kind of a little overview here, bequests are the most common, around 90% occur as bequests. And last is data management. And you'll see there isn't necessarily a room for data management, but it does interweave at all levels. Really important, making sure that you are tracking all of your activities. And that really leads us into our second slide. But before I dive into that, I will say, you'll see the attic and the roof of the house are grayed out, and that is by design. So for the purposes of this particular series, we really wanted to focus and narrow down on the foundation or the garden, the first floor and the second floor. But again, if you want to learn more about the House of Development and dive into those upper levels, feel free to reach out to us, contact us, or check out our website. All right. And now moving into our next slide here. This talks a little bit about what we call our smart home, which is essentially the House of Development plus technology. So within all the activities we'll be talking about in this and upcoming sessions, we want to keep in mind data management and technology to really ensure that all donors are being tracked and stewarded, all activities are being tracked, really making sure you're staying hyper-organized. So we can think about this, again, kind of as a House of Development plus things like digital campaigns, online giving, e-crowdfunding, CRM systems to manage and leverage agency data. And CRM is an acronym for Client or Customer Relationship Management. So those are platforms like Bloomerang or Salesforce, which is one that we advocate for our clients because it is free for nonprofits and has the capacity to grow with their organization. Also things like research and data analytics. So we really want to implement these tools at each stage in each room of the House of Development to make sure that your fundraising can really maximize and you're optimizing everything. Okay, so with that, high-level overview of the House of Development. Again, we'll be talking about most of those rooms in more detail in upcoming sessions and presentations. But now let's dive into communications, which is, again, the garden or pathway. So here's the visual laid out a little bit. Again, it's PR, websites, social media, e-newsletters, and annual reports. So we like to use the analogy of a garden. Just kind of, it helps kind of thinking about cultivating donors. That's really what communication is doing. Right. So the importance of individual donors before we dive further into communications, I want to just highlight how important individual donors are to agencies and fundraising. So this slide provides some data in terms of how giving is distributed. So first, you'll see corporations account for about 4.3% of all total donations to 501c3 agencies. 9.5 are bequests, 18.7 are foundations, and a whopping 67.4% are individuals. So that is significant, and you definitely don't want to be missing out on a lot of that potential revenue. All right. So what does gardening have to do with fundraising? So again, in keeping with the metaphor of the House of Development's garden represents cultivating potential donors and stewarding potential donors through storytelling and information dissemination. So you have a story. Every 501c3 is making an impact in their community, and that story can be told in really productive ways and in impactful ways. And good storytelling is one that nurtures communities and nurtures the community and supporter passion. So what you're doing essentially in this storytelling and in communicating with potential donors and with your community is heightening affinity for the organization over time. It also satisfies kind of expectations in the digital era. People expect to receive newsletters or see agencies on social media. So kind of fulfilling that role as well. The key is really to also find that balance between over communication and under communication, which can be sometimes tricky to navigate, but it is highly individualized for your organization, what your network and donors expect to see. For instance, some of our clients do 4 newsletters per year, some do 1 a month. It really kind of depends on what makes sense for you and your capacity, as well as what your donors expect to see. And you don't want to over communicate because it can lead to donor fatigue and they get tired of hearing from you. So really just trying to walk that fine balance is really important. Okay, so now I want to dive into more detail on each of the elements of the garden or the pathway, the walkway. So first up, PR. Why is PR important? So that's the first element in the garden, public relations. So PR allows you to steward current donors, attract new donors, move new donors along in the development funnel. So, from first interaction to a donation. It also enforces your community relevance. And some elements of PR are kind of natural systems that many 501c3s already leverage, where PR is already used and kind of extended. So you can utilize PR in the realm of key events, special projects that might be occurring in a certain community or new community that you're expanding to, especially if you're a direct service group, as well as strategic partnerships. Right. So with that kind of overview of PR, I want to dive into a specific case study of one of our past clients to kind of highlight some of the elements and how it was actually used in a real example. So on this slide here, you'll see Rock the Casa. And Rock the Casa is an annual rock and roll show in California, Contra Costa County specifically. It was started by Dan Ashley, who's a lead broadcaster in San Francisco County for ABC7 News, which is a major news outlet in the area. And he endorses court-appointed special advocates and camps for children who are disadvantaged. And some years ago, he identified two groups who could benefit from this event, which is rock and roll bands, which get goodwill for attending the event, and funding for different types of agencies. So each year he attracts a rock and roll band to raise funds to support various agencies that provide services to children in need. And it's become a really highly sought after event, really important in the community. And yeah, it's a great example of how PR can be utilized in a really productive way. So what are some of the elements that he's leveraged to really kick off the event and make it the success that it has been? So first, just by purely working at ABC7 News, he got free advertising. He had a lot of connections, which is great. He engaged local magazines. He also was able to obtain free advertising at all movie theaters in the area. He secured local newspaper advertising. And they also played heavily to leverage his name in social media to make sure that any posts about the event was really being seen and caught on. So kind of as his name was such a big deal in social news, they really tried to merge his name with Rock the Casa in the context of this communication avenue. So again, like leveraging network is really important, and you might not have these types of connections necessarily, but it's something that you can definitely explore with your community and look into potential, lower cost marketing opportunities for your events with newspapers and ads on TV, things like that you can really explore further and look into your community for potential connections that you can leverage. All right, so let's dive into websites. Why are websites so important? Websites are really critical because they can help you reach people in the moment that they're searching for your cause and most interested in your vision. It's also expected, people expect to see a website associated with most agencies, organizations. It helps with data capture as well. You can get data analytics from folks who visit your website, how long they stay, where they are diverted to. And you can also, again, gain some donor intelligence. Some key elements of websites are, first, they provide a central hub of communication and activity, and they can be static or dynamic. So inbound, they can track people into your website, and outbound, it's a way to reach out to them to continue or enhance their engagement. They're also a transaction engine. It's where people can transact, donate, engage with your organization. It's a content management system where you can keep your content and messaging and current news events. You can keep a blog section to really get people excited about current news that's going on with your organization. And you'll also want to make sure that you're choosing the right URL extension if you don't already have a website. So there's different options, .org, .net, .us, .foundation, lots to explore, and you'll just want to look into what makes most sense for your agency. So let's dive into another case study, and this is with a current client, Columbia Play Project, based in Vancouver, Washington. They provide STEAM education to kids in the Portland, Vancouver area. And this is a screenshot of their landing page, which is great for a number of reasons. First off, it gives a lot of great information about their programming. Unfortunately, I can't really show that right now. I don't want to divert us too much, but feel free to check out their website. You'll see a lot of information on their programming, what they're doing currently. Also, it's branding wise, really on brand with their mission and their work. The design is fun and friendly, really approachable. You'll also see information really specific to their mission that's really positive to encourage people to donate. A mistake that some agencies, organizations make is in being too negative about certain issues that they may be addressing, like, for instance, lack of STEAM resources in the region. Definitely great to highlight that, but also you want to keep it positive so people feel that they can make a difference. Another great key element of Columbia Play's website is that it's interactive. There's a video embedded, so people can really take a look, and it's great to have some different types of means of, video, visual elements, reading, so people can really stay engaged. And as you'll see, there's also a really prominent donate button right at the top right to make sure that's easy to find. Some clients that we start working with that might have just set up their website, their donate button can be kind of hard to find, and you want to make it as easy as possible for people who are popping on just to donate. You don't want to make it too hard and then they just give up and leave. So you want to make sure that it's really obvious and right there for them to click on. Right. Now let's dive into social media. All right, first up, why is social media important? Again, first, it's really cost effective. It's a cost-effective method for distribution or dissemination of information, different news and updates, and it's a really low barrier to access. So a lot of people have social media accounts, easy to create one and interact with. And here's some stats too to help you understand why social media can be so important to help direct people to your website. So about 5% of people who watch YouTube videos go on to make a donation. 55% of people who engage with nonprofits on Twitter make some sort of transaction. And calls to action on Twitter are a really great way to drive donors back to your website to donate or volunteer. You can also get them to retweet, which boosts your tweet as well as the organization. And 75% of Instagram users take action and visit a website to transact. So you'll definitely, if you aren't already, want to explore different ways that you can utilize social media a little bit further to drive people again back to your website or engage further. All right. So here's some key elements to social media. First up is storytelling. Again, helps you engage your audience, develop affinity for your organization. And another element is you'll want to think about platform selection. So where is your audience and what resources can you spend? So Twitter, you'll be spending time, a little bit of effort in keeping up and making sure that you're regularly posting. Facebook might be some ad money if you want to target people through advertising on Facebook. Instagram, you'll want a nice phone and some basic photography skills, as well as, again, a little bit of a time investment. And LinkedIn, you'll need some traditional networking savvy. You'll also want to make sure that you have a call to action on essentially all of your posts on social media. You'll want to think about what is the purpose of each post. Is it, are you trying to get someone to make a donation, read an article, like it and repost it, a combination? Make sure you have something so that they can further interact with your organization. You don't want to just make a post and not have them want to engage further. Another element of social media is metrics. So you can also, again, show your metrics, and it'll show your reach a little bit. If you show how many followers you have on social media, can be a great, as we'll dive into in future session, a great way to show corporations and kind of your reach and what impacts you might have in furthering their reach as well. And last key element of social media, opportunities. So for instance, Facebook donation buttons, fundraising options on a lot of different social media sites that you can explore. They're shopping through Instagram, polls, surveys, live streaming, a lot of different opportunities that you can explore in social media that you can leverage and utilize to really optimize your reach. And again, further engage people who might be on social and tell your story. Right. So here is, again, another case study for highlighting social media and how it's been used in the past. So I'm sure most of you are aware of the Ice Bucket Challenge. And this was through the ALS Association, trying to conquer Lou Gehrig's disease. The aim was to get as many people as possible to get their networks to donate to ALS Association so they could, again, support research for Lou Gehrig's. So I'm sure you're all aware it was really successful, had a lot of airtime. All the networks picked it up, a lot of celebrities engaged. It was really, really impressive. It raised lots of money in a really short amount of time. But this is something that a lot of people might not think of, but in the more long-term fundraising development sense, it was actually a massive failure, which is, again, really contrary to public perception. Although they had a lot of engagement on social, a lot of engagement in the movement, ALS didn't ramp up resources to steward all those newly acquired donors or their networks. So there was no post-event capitalization. They weren't also tracking donations that were coming in through the event or the challenge. So again, this is why data analytics is so important, so that you can track donors and steward them for the future to continue to engage them and receive annual funding rather than it's just that one-time donation. So this is really a case of both a successful social media campaign, again, got picked up by a lot of news networks, had a lot of engagement, and shows what can be achieved in the social media realm. But it's also a cautionary tale to just make sure that you're tracking donors to come in through your social media sites and through your different campaigns so that you can really properly steward them and cultivate them to be long-term donors and to be more in-depth supporters as well, potentially engaging their networks and continuing to expand your own. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about emails. So emails are really important because they're such an effective form of stewardship. It's really the optimal way to communicate directly with your members and stakeholders. It's also expected by donors, and it's a great way to maintain the relationship. I will say one caveat that I want to mention is that communications with your donors should be really donor-centric. So if a donor prefers snail mail, then do snail mail. If they prefer text, then honor that as well. We do have one major donor for one of our clients who just wants to communicate via text, so that's what we do for him. So email is a great default, but you'll just want to make sure that you are also taking into account if you're aware of certain donor preferences and making sure you're communicating in the way that they prefer. All right. Email is also really important because it, again, really optimizes your resources. It's a really efficient way to communicate. And I will say also, in addition to email, some old school methods like sending postcards following appeals for thank you to donors can be really effective as well if you want to add that into some of your email communications. So if you want to have, for instance, some board members or program officers send a short thank you letter to some donors after end of year appeal, that can be a great way to additionally steward them. And because they don't receive things like that as often now, because most agencies are moving over to email, it can be really stand out in their mind. But again, you'll want to make sure that you're honoring whatever the donor prefers. We do have some donors who don't want mail at all, so make sure that you're honoring that. All right. So key elements of email. First, you'll want to think about timing of the delivery. Is it event-based versus routine? So for instance, event-based would be an appeal, end of year appeal, spring appeal versus a newsletter. List segmentation, you'll also want to segment your donor list by, for instance, VIPs. So for instance, major donors or highly engaged connectors. Program specific. So if you know that certain groups of people are really interested in one of your programs versus another, you can also segment by that. So you're just highlighting certain programs over the others for that particular list. And then you'll also want a master list of everyone that can, certain communications you want to just send to everyone, and you don't need to segment. And you want to make sure that you have that one massive cohesive list. Audience, this is also why analytics are really necessary. It'll help you determine which list they fall into. So you'll want to make sure that you're tracking what you know about donors. Again, if they've expressed previous interest in certain programs over the others, you want to make sure you're tracking donations coming in from each one, so you know if they're a major donor, anything like that. Content, you'll also want to decide who the content is coming from within your organization. So is it coming from the executive director, the program staff? You'll want to tailor depending on the content and the call to action. For instance, typically you'll see any appeals coming in from the executive director versus if there's certain project or program updates for a newsletter, that might be coming from a program staff. And call to action, you'll just want to make sure also that it's continues to be really mission-centric, focused on your organization, making a donation or something that is in line with your mission and work. And next key element also is method of delivery. So again, this is digital versus paper. It's going to be what the donor wants. Again, if they, for instance, some donors might not want email at all, they want mail. Again, you'll want to make sure you're listening to that and honoring it. And you'll also want to make sure that it's mobile ready. So this really just means make sure that it looks nice on mobile phone. So a lot of people, they're checking their emails on the go. You'll want to make sure that any newsletters you send look good still and aren't just purely for viewing on a computer. Right. So on the right here, you'll also see some key stats. So you'll see these are kind of what is ideal, what we want to see for newsletters and emails. So you'll want to see 95% delivery is really great. That's a 5% bounce rate. So 90% of the emails were delivered to who you sent to. There will be a 5 to 25% open rate, a 15 to 30% click rate, and a 1 to 2% conversion rate. So that means they transacted or followed up on the call to action. So again, this is ideal. You might not see this when you are first starting out, but it's something that you can work to achieve kind of some of the, an idea of the defaults and kind of what we want to aim for. And also one additional comments, depending on the size of your organization on your database, your mail list, you can also test certain types of larger scale email campaigns. So you can do a couple different versions of an email, for instance, with maybe some slightly different content or different subject line. You can send it out to 1 to 20 people and the other to another 20 and segment that and kind of see what seems to garner higher conversion and interaction. And you can use that building your metrics and thinking about that moving forward and what seems to work well and what doesn't. All right. Now let's talk again about a case study. So this is another one of our current clients with COGEO. They're called Ecologic Development Funds. They're a US-based 501c3 that provides direct services and training for rural and indigenous communities in Central America and Mexico. In order to, they support sustainable livelihoods and stewardship of natural resources. So doing really incredible work in that region. And this is a sample of their latest spring appeal. And you'll see, as I was mentioning, this was written by Barbara, their executive director. So usually appeals are great coming from the ED on the kind of, at least that's the default, but definitely want to tailor that based on your organization and how you interact with your community. So this particular call to action for the spring appeal was focused on supporting their fuel efficient stoves. The aim was to raise $5,000 to build 33 new stoves in Guatemala in order to achieve their 2023 goal of building a total of 712 stoves. And you'll see it also included, the messaging also included gift match language. So this was a special offer through Global Giving, which is one of their donation platforms that they utilize. But you can also do this through, if you have a larger donor who maybe donates $5,000 a year, you can ask, hey, can we frame this as a gift match? Can be just really great language to leverage and help inspire people to donate. They like to see that their gift is being matched in some way, and see that their impact is being doubled or somehow, or even tripled sometimes. Another element too of this messaging, you'll see there's multiple donation links throughout the email. Top and bottom, you want to make sure that you catch anyone who is reading the message early on in case they don't want to keep reading. You don't want to lose them halfway through and then they just click off. You'll also see the last page has a really prominent, nice big donate button. You could even put a donate button at the top as well. Just make sure that people can see it and kind of throughout the messaging, especially if it's a longer email. And as a tool also for background, this was sent via MailChimp, but there's a lot of other email platforms that you can utilize depending on your resources and what you typically use. All right. So with that, let's dive into annual reports. And this slide is interesting because annual reports historically played a really important role as an external facing document, especially for donors and foundations, to help them really understand the health of the 501c3. It's kind of trailed off a little bit. It's because it's no longer a legal requirement. With resources like GuideStar, it allows members to access 990 forms and really understand the 501c3's health. So again, annual reports not required, so we're not seeing quite as many of them, but they can still be a really impressive and important tool for stewardship and for both foundations and donors. And it used to be print, but now paradigm has shifted and we now are seeing a lot of online versions of annual reports. So it's cut off the cost of printing, which is great. Again, really great reporting tool for donors. They also, we see them operating almost as a case statement within a specific time snapshot even. So it's a nice way to, send to them early in the year that you create it to just talk a little bit about your organization and what you've been up to and how you're doing financially and programmatically. And for a case study, I wanted to stick with ecologic development funds. And you'll see in the previous slide, a couple little snapshots of their first couple pages. You'll see the title page and a little bit about ecologic. Subsequent pages talk a little bit about their programming, and we have a financial page. And all that can be found in this link here, which takes you to their website, which has some more information on their financial health, as well as a link to the annual report if you want to take a look to browse it and kind of for an example of typical layout annual reports. So again, the annual report typically consists of program highlights. It's great to have also a letter from the executive director. You can do case studies too, just to really impact the storytelling and show what impact you're having, as well as, of course, the financial page to show your financial health. And the letter from the ED also, you can incorporate some letters or quotes throughout from program staff, board members, the report really can be very inclusive and make the donor or whoever you're sending it to feel part of the community. So again, can be a really strong stewardship tool. All right. And that covers everything I had for this presentation. So I wanted to leave some time for questions for everyone. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. So I think with that, let's dive into any questions. So you can feel free to chime in on chat or just speak them out, unmute, and we can answer anything you might have.
Chelsi, it looks like we have a question in the chat, which is, what does PR stand for?
Yes, that's a great question. PR just stands for public relations. So communications that you're using to interact with the public.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Go ahead.
Well, what is a nice phone in? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. That's my I have two questions, but one is what you said for Instagram, you need a nice phone. What does that mean?
Yes, so simply just a smartphone that you can take pictures on. Higher quality, the better, but just making sure you're taking relatively high quality photos. Alternatively, if you have a camera, that's great too. You can also upload them to the computer.
It has to do with your taking photographs. I didn't get that
exactly
from your post.
Exactly.
So, all right.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, just taking some way to take nice, pretty high quality photos. Higher quality, of course, the better, to make them look as nice as possible.
Thank you. And after Eugene, I have another question, but Eugene can go first.
Is there any type of communication to use at any occasion? So just to make sure I'm understanding the question, are you asking if there's a specific type of communication that you can use just across the board for all types of occasions?
Yeah, in any occasion you have to deal with donors. You have to, is there one type you have to use, or anyone that can come?
Typically, when you're communicating with donors, email is a great one to use as a default, communicating via email. But as I've mentioned, you also really want to make sure you're tailoring it to what the donor prefers if you know that information. But as a default, email is really solid if you want to communicate on a more one-to-one basis. And that's a great kind of, most people have an email and they're comfortable with that.
Okay.
Okay, so may I ask my question now? Thank you.
Yes, please do.
It has to do with the annual report. I just wanted to verify that you said that annual reports are no longer required of nonprofits. Is that what you said?
Correct.
Who does the requiring or did the requiring?
That was the IRS and just certain fiscal requirements. But now that 990s are more available, that's kind of dropped off. So it's no longer needed for kind of reporting purposes.
I see. Okay, no, that's very interesting. Yeah. Well, I'm associated with, I'm with a neighborhood association, and we're not really a nonprofit. Some of them become nonprofits, but ours is not. But I like the idea of our issuing an annual report. It wouldn't be focused on fiscal health necessarily, but just on what we've accomplished during the year and what our goals are and so on. That's, I'm making a note of that. I think I'd like to do that in the future.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. And I will say annual reports, we actually have seen that in a couple of clients. We don't really put the fiscal or the financial part in it. So it's kind of just a more high level programmatic update of the organization. Like I mentioned, kind of a case statement that's just for that year.
Well, thank you for that idea. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Excellent. Any other questions from anyone?
No, not at
Not
this
so far.
time. Thank you. Thank you
Of
very much.
course. Of course. Yeah. Thank you everyone for listening. And if you do have any follow-up questions, feel free to shoot me an email. It's like maybe someone dropped something in.
I do have one question, and it's not what you were focusing on here, but is there a way to find technical experts that can help you with broken social media? For example, the link between our dreadful website and Facebook is broken, and when we pursue it, Facebook tells us we have no account, but we have an account. I post to it all the time. That's one. At Facebook, I am an admin along with another person. We are unable to add anybody. The invitations simply don't go out. And we would like to have someone who has posting ability. We don't need any more admins. So we're kind of helpless in that regard. We have a Zoom account to which people with login credentials can log in, except for one person who can't get in, even though she's using the correct login credentials. And so it just feels like everywhere we turn right now, we are having some problems. How would we track down a technician, so to speak, a car repair person who would fix this stuff for us? Because we can't figure it out.
Yeah, that is a great question. And yeah, sorry you're having so much struggle. It sounds like a lot of it seems to be centered on your account with Facebook. Have you tried reaching out to their help services? I wonder if it's something with...
Yes,
yeah,
but
sometimes I'm sure, and
they're too beleaguered. I mean, they don't help anybody as far as I can tell. They just shunt you away. So no, yes, that they invite you to reach out, but then they slam the door in your face.
Yeah.
Alas.
There are sites like, for instance, TaskRabbit can be somewhere you can go. They might provide some services for lower cost and kind of looking into figuring out some of those tech issues and identifying the issue and the problem.
Okay.
That's one thought. Yeah.
I'll try that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at your company, you probably have someone in-house who keeps these little disasters from building up, right?
Yeah, we usually, if something like that happens, we just dive into it and try to figure out what the issue is. It's something we'd have to really take a look at. But okay. I will say, if you want to reach out to me too, if you're still having trouble, I can try to help connect you with some.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Okay. Yeah. Well, let me try TaskRabbit.
See what you can find, and
yeah. And then if that doesn't work, I will reach out to you. And your email address was, again, it's cs at
COGEO.us, and that's just our company name.
Okay, yeah, I can't read my own writing. Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much.
Of course. Excellent. Let's see, looks like we got another question. I'm going to just read it off. I was wondering, what are the social media that you recommend to be safest and best to use, and which one do you not recommend, just to be aware and stay alerted? Yeah, that's a great question. Typically, we recommend kind of the most common, because that's where people are going to be and where you're going to find your donors. So Twitter and Instagram and Facebook are typically the biggest ones. It really depends on your network and where you think that donors are going to be most likely, your donors and network are going to be most likely to be accumulating. So for instance, Instagram is a great one if you have a little bit of a younger donor base. Facebook maybe a little bit older, but it really, again, depends on where your network is and the age range and where you think they'll be kind of most likely to frequent. And unsafe, I don't think there are any that are coming to mind right now that would be red flags, but I would stick more to the mainstream ones, just again, because it's going to optimize your time a little bit more. You don't want to be focusing on ones that not a lot of people are on and you're not going to get a lot of engagement with. What about TikTok? Yeah, TikTok is a great one as well. So definitely want to explore that. Most of our clients aren't necessarily on TikTok. Again, mostly Instagram and Twitter, just because TikTok is a little bit more, it's widely used, but it's also kind of a little bit more niche, especially among the younger generation. So again, really depends on where your donors are at, where you can find them. Right. Well, again, if anyone has any follow-up questions, just feel free to shoot me an email. And Lindsay, if you want to take it over.
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Chelsea. That was great. And thanks to all of you for joining us. We will get this posted online soon. I'll send out a link to everyone who registered if you'd like to revisit any of the content. And we hope to see you all next Wednesday at 4 for the second session on annual and membership giving.